Let us wait for a few moments for others to join. Maybe we can start after 2 minutes.
Okay.
Okay. So hello everyone. Welcome to our weekly seminar. I think we can start now. So today's speaker is from Aries. Neelam will talk about her recent work on radiative feedback in massive star forming regions. Neelam, please go ahead. Floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. So today I will be speaking about the radiative feedback in massive star forming region. So first of all, star forming regions. So star forming regions are the sites of star formation, and where young stars are mainly embedded in molecular clouds. And we know that most of the stars, they form in clusters. So clustering is the dominant mode of star formation. So in these type of regions, means star forming regions, stars form in a wide range of masses. So they may be very massive stars, means more than 8 solar mass stars, and there may be low mass stars also. And even substellar mass objects or brown dwarfs are also found in these type of star forming regions. So these are the best sites to study the premium sequence evolution of the young stars of different mass. So as uh, I said, that star forming regions contains both low mass stars and high mass stars also. So if there are high mass stars, so we can also study the effect of the high mass stars or on the subsequent star formation, or the further star formation activity, and also on the properties of the stars which are forming or which are already formed. So if there are massive stars uh, in the region, so because very massive stars or stars more than 8 solar mass, or if we talk about the spectral type, so earlier than B2 type stars, they produce a very significant amount of ultraviolet photons. And as soon as they form, they continuously ionize the surrounding gas and also create the H2 regions. So this H2 region is not a static entity, but it spreads, and the expansion of the H2 region may may lead to the different scenarios in the star forming regions. So generally the temperature of the H2 region is around 10 to the power 4 Kelvin. And this expansion of the H2 region in the parental molecular cloud may produce different type of feedback. So when we talk about the radiative feedback, so radiative feedback may be positive or it may be negative. So in the positive feedback, what happens that this radiative pressure from the ionizing star or massive star, it may induce the further star formation in the left out molecular material. And if in the second feedback, means negative feedback, the cloud may be dispersed and disrupted by the ionizing radiation from the massive star. So this will inhibit or curb the star formation activity in the region. So here in the first figure, upper figure, we have a central star, massive star at the center, and it has created an H2 region, and it's still expanding in the nearby molecular cloud. So and this kind of features we can see in star forming regions, like here in the down figure you can see there is a bubble like structure. So this is a H2 region called RCW120. So you can see this blue emission is from the H alpha or ionized gas, and you can see spherical geometry of the H2 region. So at the boundary we can see some PAH emission, or which is from the PDR regions, or photon dominated region surrounding the H2 region. So and we can also see some young stars here, which are shown with which you can see with the like yellow peaks here. So, and also there is a slight red emission, which is from the heated dust grain in the interior of the H2 region. So this type of geometry, this type of spherical H2 region are very common. So region expands front and SOC front, layer of molecular material is collected. So we can, in this type of scenario, we can see some massive fragments at the periphery of the H2 region, or of nearly spherical geometry. So in this case, this is SH104 H2 NH2 region. It is taken from De Harving et al. 2003. So here you can see in the center, there is the H alpha plus S2 emission, which is shown with the turquoise color. And at the periphery, you can see 13 CO emission. So this 13 CO emission is nearly spherically distributed in a ring-like structure. So this molecular material, mass of this molecular material is around 6,000 solar mass. So and if we see the high density fragments using CS2, so we can see there are 4 different massive fragments at the periphery of the H2 region. So these are the high density fragments. So in this case, collect and collapse process, we can find equally distributed high density fragments at the periphery of the H2 region. And but this is not always the case. Means there are other star forming regions, like here this is W5H2 region, and this is a spectral image of W5 complex. So this is a W5 east, and here at the right side is the W5 west H2 region. So the ionizing source of these
Neelam, Neelam, in the
yes.
previous image, is there no center object, massive object?
Yeah, at
Previous
the
image.
center there is an ionizing source, massive star.
Massive star, right?
Yes.
The center object is a massive star, right?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Okay. So if you see in this figure, you can see there are the ionizing source of these two, W5 East and W5 West, are different. Here, in case of W5 East, at the center, there is a massive star. And we can also see these type of structure, elongated structures also. So these structures, when we see in the HL5 images, so they also have bright, at the head of these structure, there is a bright feature or bright HL5 emission. So they are also sometimes called the bright rim clouds. So it means that the molecular clouds are means they don't have, they have inhomogeneities. It's not necessary that they have isotropic distribution or homogeneous distribution. So so the same features are also prominent in this image. This is from Herschel. So this is again, we can see these features which are bright in clouds. And also this is like 8 micron image from the feature. So here also we can see these features, and we can also see some bright or dense clump inside these features. So these may be the protostellar objects inside the clouds. So like here, this is also an example of bright rim clouds of BRC. And here also we can see these type of pillar like structures. So all of these structures, they point towards the ionizing star side. If you see, when we zoom the right W5 East part, so here we can also see some elongated structures which are very small as compared to the bright rim clouds. So these structures, we call them elephant trunk-like structures. So they are also they are also pointing towards the massive star side. So the massive star is somewhere here, where this circle is drawn. And the same features are also prominent in the Herschel images, and we can also see some stars inside these structures. So at the periphery of the
I request Dr. Ramakant to please mute his speaker.
Okay, so there are in this figure different kind of processes which are triggering the star formation in the H2 region are shown. Like in the first case here, there is a due to the dynamical instability, which may be of small scale, the low mass star formation is happening. And in the in this number 2 position, you can see that here, due to the collect and collapse, the massive star, a single massive star or a group of stars is forming at the periphery. And also in this number 3, the ionization of turbulent structures is happening here. And when we see this number 4, so this may be the radiative dribble implosion. And in case of radiation driven implosion, it's basically due to the due to the ionizing radiation from massive star. And if there is a pre-existing clumps and core in the molecular cloud, so this radiation from the massive star, it will compress that clump and induce it to form new stars. So these type of processes we can see in the H2 regions. And it all depends on the conditions in which, or density of the molecular cloud from which the stars are forming, and that which mechanism will be dominating to others. And in some cases or some regions, we can find more than one process which may be triggering the star formation. So when we talk about the radiation driven implosion, so in this case, here we have this is an image of for the Eagle Nebula. So here we can see this kind of pillar like structures. So they are also forming due to the impact from the ionizing star. And in the right hand side, we can see this is a kind of bright rimmed cloud. So here we can see this is an H-alpha image. So if here we can see here the bright emission at the surface of the cloud or head of the cloud. And when we see the distribution of the young stars in this region, so we find out, we can see that mostly the young stellar object or young stars are aligned towards the ionizing star side. And there is a very a star which is red. So this red star is the younger star as compared to the stars which are outside the bright rim or towards the ionizing star side. So this kind of arrangement means the star formation is proceeding from the ionizing star side towards the cloud side. This is called the small scale sequential star formation hypothesis, which is given by Sujitani et al. 1995. So this is only the qualitative evidence for the sequential star formation in small scale. And we can also see the age gradients. Age gradient means once if we estimate the ages of the stars which are outside the bright rim and which are inside the bright rim, so we can say that there is a small scale sequential star formation or not. Okay, so why low mass stars are so important? Because in most of the cases, we want to know about the distribution of the young low mass stars in the star forming regions. So basically, the young low mass stars are used to trace the recent star formation sites, because still they are young, so they will trace the star formation activity, where the star formation activity is more prominent as compared to the other side. Also, we can study the star formation history of the region, and we can study the influence of massive star on the subsequent star formation, as well as on the evolution of the circumstellar disk. So when we talk about the low mass star formation, so low mass stars have different phases. Collectively, these phases are called the young stellar objects. So in the first phase, this is a collapsing cloud. In the second phase, it has a well-developed circumstellar disk and also have outflow. So these are also sometimes called the class 1 objects. And if we see the spectral energy, there are spectral energy distribution. So spectral energy distribution of the class 1 sources.
Neelam, we are not able to see the title of your slides.
Even
Yeah, no.
I don't know how to remove it. I mean,
Something is blocking.
Yeah, please try with the PDF file. Can you do that?
no, it's like
Maybe you can just turn off screen sharing once and then do it again. Sometimes that may help.
okay. Can you see?
No, it's still there.
There is some problem still. But at your end, Neelam,
Yeah.
is there any
No,
problem at
it's
your end?
like it's showing a zoom, mute, and all these buttons, but I don't know how to remove this one.
You just drag and drop somewhere.
Okay.
Yeah.
Are you able to?
Yeah, it's gone now.
Okay.
Yeah, it's gone now. Yeah.
Okay. So, okay. So if we see the spectral energy distribution of these sources, so class 1 sources, the spectral energy distribution, it's speaking around the longer wavelengths. And so we can see this class 1 sources in the far infrared wavelengths or mid infrared wavelengths. So we can also see in the class 2 objects. Class 2 objects have like circumstellar disk and central object. So we can see these are sometimes also called the classical T-Tauri stars, and they have we can get if we see their spectral energy distribution or SED. So the emission from the disk is also coming. So this is like emission from excess emission from the disk. So this we generally get in the longer wavelengths or infrared wavelengths, and sometimes this is also called the IR axis. And in the class 3 objects, we have the circumstellar disk is nearly or almost it's over or it's gone. So we have a central object, and the SED is mostly like a black body. And these are also sometimes called the weak-line T-Tauri stars. So these classical T-Tauri and weak-line T-Tauri or class 2 or class 3, they are also visible. So to identify the YSOs in star forming regions, I will be using mostly the infrared wavelengths, because young stellar objects are deeply embedded in the molecular cloud. So the infrared wavelengths can penetrate through these clouds, and we can observe them in the infrared. And also X-ray X-rays X-ray emission is also known for the YSOs. So we can also observe the young stellar objects using the X-ray wavelengths. So these are a few regions where trigger star formation is supposed to occur. So like here, these are the these two figures. In these two figures, for NGC 2175, this is showing the distribution of the young stellar objects or YSOs in the region. And here red is class 1 sources, yellow are class 2 sources, and blue are the transition disk sources. So here we can see that mostly they are distributed in an aligned way, and also there is some scattered distribution is also observed in these type of H2 regions. This is from Koenig 2012 paper. So they have used the WISE data, which is wide field infrared explorer data. So they have found the triggered star formation in a few massive star forming regions. And one of these regions is Berkeley 59. So in this region also, at the center, these black plus symbol, they are showing the location of the ionizing star or massive stars. And we can also see how the young stars are distributed in this region. And at the periphery also, there are some structures like bright rimmed clouds, they are also found. and also young stars are also found towards the periphery of the H2 region. So we have studied this W4 cloud complex to study the star formation history of the region, as well as to study the evolution of the young low mass stars in this region. So this region is excited by a massive star, by massive stars. There are around 12 massive stars at the center, and which are the cluster member, and the central cluster is called the IC1805. And at the periphery, we can see many structures, elongated structures, globe-like structures, and also we have two bright rimmed clouds, prominent bright rimmed clouds, BRC7 and BRC5 are here, and they also have like young stars or IRAS source inside their head. So in both of the cases, we studied these two BRCs, and we found that these BRCs contain means intermediate mass stars. Also, the H2 region is located at a distance of around 2 kpc, and we also studied the central cluster and found the reddening was around 0.65 EB minus V, and small sequential star formation was also studied in this BRC5 and BRC7 region. So in this case, we derived the ages of the young stars using the HR diagram, and we found that the stars which are inside the cloud were younger as compared to the stars which were outside the cloud. So we also use the SPGER data for this central region, and also X-ray data from Chandra and optical data from CFHT. And we found that we use this data to study the disk fraction variation in the W4 cloud complex. So here at the center, these three most massive stars are they are marked here, and when we see the distance versus the classical t Tauri fraction or class 2 fraction versus distance, so we found that if we see within the uncertainty, there is not much impact on the circumstellar disk of the young low mass stars from the ionizing radiation from massive star. So and we also studied the spatial distribution of the YSOs in this region, and we found that mostly YSOs were showing some aligned distribution from ionizing sources towards the bright rim cloud sides, but there were some YSOs which were randomly distributed, or which were forming the scattered distribution. So we found based on the spatial distribution of the YSOs, we found 3 new cluster in this region. So these are marked here, like this 3, 4, and 5. So here it's like in the front of the BRC7, and also in the front of there is a cometry global cloud 4. So and there is a clump of very young stars which we can see at Striati stars here. So we found 3 new cluster in this region, and also the distributed or scattered distribution of young stars. So we see that this cluster, which is in front of the BRC7, this is very young, because it has mostly class 2 sources or classical t Tauri stars. And this may be due to the triggering effect from the massive stars, but still we have not done still we did not find, I mean, to confirm this, we have to do spectroscopy to confirm their ages and confirm the age gradient. And also when we plotted the 24 micron sources, which are mostly the protostellar sources. So we see that there are sources which are falling on the top of these type of elongated structures. So we can see these elongated structures with at least 1 or 2 stars for around 18 ETLS. So from this we hypothesized maybe these type of ETLS, or they are also contributing to the distributed WISO population. And in addition to these ETLS, there are some roundish objects in the H2 region. So these tiny, roughly roundish objects, these are called the globulates, and these were mainly studied by Gam et al. So they found that the mean radii for these type of objects is around 10 KEU. And they also estimated their masses. So by estimating their masses, they concluded that because their masses are very low, so they may be forming the brown dwarfs or freely floating planetary mass objects. So this kind of structure or globulates, they are very common in other star forming regions or H2 region. So this is an example here also. So this is from the Rosetta Nebulae. So here also we have many globulates. So in IC 1805 also around 18 globulates they have found based on the high resolution HL5 images. So now I am coming to the other object, which is the galactic H2 region SH2112. So in this case, this is located in the direction of the Cygnus OB6, and here if we see in the HL5 images, this represents a spherical cell-like morphology and it has a diameter of around 15 arc-minute. And the exciting source of this H2 region is shown with this diamond symbol, and this we found this is an O8V type star. And we also calculated the distance for this star, and it comes out to be around 2 kpc. And reddening to this region is around 0.64 magnitude. So if this image is created using the DSS2R band and B band and CGPS image. So this blue emission is from the ionized hydrogen. And if we see this is in the radio wavelengths, and if we see in R band image, so we can see here this dark structure. So this may be a dark dust lane which is obscuring the emission from the ionized material. And when we see the same region in the infrared wavelength, so this image is created using the UKITS data in GHK bands. So here we can see towards the north western periphery of the region, there is we can see some sources which are shown with the red colors, and also in the southwest region also we find some young stars. And using the UKITS data, we also selected the young stars in the region. And in addition to this, we have also in this diagram we have also plotted the MSX sources. So there are MSX1 and MSX2 sources. So this is a near infrared color diagram, which is mostly used to identify the young stars. So stars which are falling in this region, which are shown with the green color. So they are mostly stars with the IR axis or class 2 sources, and the stars or the sources which are falling beyond this, so they are most probably class 1 sources or protostellar objects. And using this near infrared color diagram, and also the mid infrared data from the WISE, we could identify around 138 young stellar objects in this region. And when we see the MSX1 and MSX2, so in this case, this is a color magnitude diagram using the UKITS near infrared data, and we can see that we have dereddened the theoretical isochrones for the distance and reddening of the reddening of the region. And if we deredden these two objects, MSX1 and MSX2, so they came out to be massive star with a reddening of around 18 to 20 AV magnitude, AV equal to 18 to 20 magnitude. So they are embedded, still embedded in the molecular cloud. And the spatial distribution of these young stars, when we plotted on the UKITS K-band image, so this is the distribution. So mostly the young stars, they are distributed towards the western periphery. And this black contour, this is showing the extinction map, so basically tracing the dust in the region. And so we can see that mostly dust is also confined towards the western periphery, and also the young stellar objects, they are also contained towards the western periphery. Okay. So this figure shows the distribution of the soaked hydrogen, so which is basically used to trace the soaked hydrogen emission. So this basically trace the PDR region in the H2 region. So here mostly we can see that the blue color, this blue color is from the ionized hydrogen, and this red color is from the soaked hydrogen. So we can see that mostly the soaked hydrogen is at the western periphery. And when we zoom these two features here, so we can also see bright or soaked hydrogen emission in these two locations also. And so the soaked hydrogen emission can also be from the location, from the regions where the protostellar jets are interacting with the interstellar, with the this molecular material or surrounding molecular material. So
Neha, I don't see your slides transactions. It's always one slide since long.
sorry.
We can't see your slides changing. It's one slide since long.
Oh, I think it's paused. So, are you able to see now?
Yeah, this is new slide now, yes. In between, we haven't seen the slides.
Okay, maybe it stopped itself. It was paused.
Okay.
Okay. So this figure is showing the distribution of the ionized gas in the H2 region, SH2112. So here, these magenta contours are from the GMRT 610 megahertz observations, and we can also see that this distribution of ionized hydrogen at 610 megahertz is also contains mostly towards the towards the western periphery. And this black contours, these black contours are the WISO surface density distribution of the young stellar objects in the region. So yeah, so if we zoom out this portion, so this is the H2 image or soft hydrogen emission image of the H2 region, and these red contours are 1280 megahertz emission, which is also obtained from the GMRT data. So here we can see there is a compact radio source here, and there is a IBL, it's called in ionized boundary layer or curved rim like structure here. So this compact radio source may be an ultra compact H2 region, and its location is almost where there is a MSX2, and MSX1 is shown with this star symbol. So this ionized boundary layer, this develops on the surface of the cloud, and we have also estimated the spectral type of the probable ionizing source for this ultra compact H2 region, and it came out to be around B0 to B0.5 star. And according to this Cooper et al. 2013, so this MSX1, this is a massive young stellar objects, which is also shown with the near infrared data, our near infrared data. And if we see the distribution of the 13CO or molecular material in the region, so we can see that this curved rim-like structure is on the surface of the molecular cloud, and here we have this ultra compact H2 region and massive ISO also. So this massive ISO is also still it's embedded in the molecular cloud. Okay, and this is again, this is S2 by O3 image, which is observed using the HCT, and here we can see this dark feature here. So it means that here also the ionized gas emission is peaking here. So if there is a massive star is at the center of the or in the middle of the molecular cloud, so we know that it will ionize the molecular cloud and form the embedded form an H2 region, but spherical H2 region. But what if the massive star is at the edge of the molecular cloud? So what happens that first the molecular, like here it's showing that massive star is here at the surface of the molecular cloud, and when it ionizes the molecular cloud and reaches at the surface cloud, it just broke the surface of the molecular cloud, and high velocity ionized gas is streaming from this H2 region. So this is called the Champagne flow, or this type of H2 region are called the Brewster H2 region. So the same morphology is also applicable to the Orion H2 region. So in case of SH2112, we also find evidences that the H2 region from the one side it is ionization bounded, and from the western side it's ionization bounded, and from the eastern side it's radiation bounded. So, and also if we see this is the Akari 160 micron image, and we see the Planck emission. So this is this contour is from the Planck, so Planck data. So from here also we can see that this is nearly elongated emission. And so from the distribution of the ionized gas and molecular presence of the molecular material, and also based on the distribution of the YSOs, we concluded that the H2 region is a blister type H2 region, and this cartoon is showing the simple geometry of the H2 region. So here this massive star BD plus 453216, it formed at the surface of the molecular cloud, and it created the H2 region. And when it reached to the surface of the molecular cloud, it just broke the surface, and it immediately spread towards the interstellar medium. So here we have this MSX2, and this MSX2 source has here there is a massive star, so it has created the ultra compact H2 region. And in this side, southwest side, so we have a ionized boundary layer. Of one side of this ionized boundary layer is ionized hydrogen, and other side is the molecular cloud. And we also calculated the pressure inside the ionized boundary layer as well as inside the cloud. And we found that the ionized boundary layer is over pressurized with respect to the internal pressure of the molecular cloud. So from that we can say that it means that the shocks are propagating, or it will they are already propagated into the cloud. So the star formation which we are seeing towards this direction, it may be possible that this is the triggering effect from the massive star. So now I come to the summary. So from massive stars may provide positive feedback to the natal or parental molecular cloud and trigger the star formation using through the various mechanisms like collect and collapse, or radiation driven implosion, or small scale instabilities, etc. And also we can find the age gradient in remaining molecular clouds, or like bright rim clouds or globules, and also see the sequential star formation in the H2 regions. And we also saw the spatial distribution of young stars in the H2 region, like W4 and W5 also. And we found that there is a clustered as well as a scattered YSO population. So this scattered YSO population may be the result of some of them may be due to are formed due to the dynamical instability in the elephant trunk-like structures. And also in case of H2 region SH2112, we found that at the periphery there is a young stellar population, and this there is also one ultra compact H2 region which may be excited by B0 to B0.5 star. And this H2 region is an example of the blister H2 region. So this H2 region means where the massive star have been formed. Massive star has been formed on the surface of a cylindrical molecular cloud. So thank you.
Thank you, Neelam, for the good presentation. Though there were some technical issues, but okay, so yeah, but these are the maybe issues inherent to the online related meetings and all. Anyway, so this is the time for questions or comments on this work. Please raise your hand, or maybe you can type your question on the chat window.
Yeah, Neelam, J1 here.
Yes.
Yeah, my first question is, what are these MSX objects?
Sorry. These are the mid-infrared objects from the MSX survey.
Sorry, my net is unstable. Yeah, please go ahead. My net is unstable. I'm unable to hear.
Sorry.
But Jeevan, we can hear you well.
Oh, okay, then fine. Okay, there
Yeah,
is a
we can hear you well. Go ahead.
Okay. Okay, the second one is there any standard study that if the central object is a massive, is a binary or single object, is there any change in the Stockholm regions and all?
Where? Hello.
Probably Williams not gone.
No, Jeevan, could you please repeat your question?
I'm unable to hear him.
Yeah, there is some problem, Jivan, your sound. Probably you can try with the mic, probably keep it little away or something like that. Yes.
No, I am close to the mic, but the problem is that I am unable to hear Neelam.
Your,
Are you able to hear Neelam?
Yes, but there is a lot of disturbance.
yes, lot of
My voice.
disturbance in your,
That's probably due to the it's frequently filled by unstable connection. Okay, my question was that, are you getting my question?
Means if I'm correct, that if there are more than one ionizing stars.
Yeah, there are two questions actually. The first one is, I'm just asking the MSX object.
So these MSX objects are mainly mid-infrared objects, which are basically the young stars, young sources observed with the
Yeah.
MSX.
To probably go on, other people can please go ahead because it's
Okay, Brijesh, please go ahead.
yes, Neelam. I think that some slides you saw and classify this YSO population in class 1, class 2, class 3.
Yeah.
But you are silent on their distribution, I mean, of mass. Have you taken into account that aspect? And
Yeah, I actually I have done this. Means most of them are low mass stars only. Most of them are less than 2 solar mass.
okay, so you mean to say that when you classify that there are YSO with
No,
and
when we
without
classify, we get only that these may be the class 1, class 2, or class 3. But to know about their mass, we use either we use the SED fitting, or we use the like optical data.
No, that is fine. That is fine. Whether this classification will, I mean, whether the mass range will have any implication on the classification?
No, I don't think so. It doesn't have.
Yeah, because of the disk fraction. So if it is MASHU, probably evaluation of disk fraction could be a little different than, let's say, 0.8 solar mass versus 2 solar mass stars. Could be a little different, right?
Yeah, but most of them, these were like two solar mass. So we have taken only those stars which were like 0.2 to 2 solar mass.
Okay. So that this was first short of and the second you mentioned somewhere that you have used CFST images
Yes.
for one of your reasons. So how deep the exposures you took in optical band and which
Actually,
band?
actually I took the archival data. So it was in V and R band. So using that data, we could reach up to like 24, 25 magnitude.
No, what is the single highest exposure in, let's say, R band?
This I forgot now.
Yeah, and what is the resolution you dealt with in that CFST?
Even I don't remember that because that was a long back.
Okay, it will be very interesting to compare that with the dot data. I think probably you have taken a couple of star forming
Like
regions,
I have also done with this TNG. It is also a 3.6 meter telescope.
Okay.
So for that, like with the 1 hour observation, I could reach like 25 magnitude in V, and yeah, so it was
Yeah,
very
it will be
deep.
very interesting since you are dealing with 4-meter class telescopes, and it will be very interesting if you can really, I mean, at various forums, you can just keep on indicating us that how, I mean, as user, how you are finding the data from such big facilities.
Yeah.
Okay, okay, thank you. Thank you.
Are there any other questions or comments? If not, so let's thank the speaker again. And thank you, Neelam, for
Yeah, thank you.
agreeing to show your research work.
Sorry,
And
there was some problem. I didn't know. I didn't check the chat box or.
it happens, yeah. Anyway, so we hope to see everybody in the next week's seminar. So bye-bye, everyone, and stay safe. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.